Hello, and welcome to another IncusOS live stream. Seems like I'm doing them earlier and earlier lately, but I think I'll probably get back to the later time at some point. Just kind of how that fits in my current schedule. Not exactly my preference as far as time goes, but you know, dealing with what, well, basically doing what I can. All right, so this is going to be a slightly unusual, I guess, compared to the previous few, in that this is not so much about adding new feature, just kind of showing how things work, playing around with some of my dev environment here. But first, let's do the usual kind of walk through what happened over the past week. Quite a few things, and yeah, just kind of taking a look at things in general. So, if you recall, last week we're doing some GPU stuff. So let's go through the commit list until that point. Where we test for GPU, because it was afterwards. Microcode stuff was around the same time. Terraform, see, there we go, GPU stuff. That's what we want. So that's basically the set of patches that were prepared last week. So tweaking, just like adding the Linux firmware stuff, and then adding the actual GPU support app and adding it everywhere and publishing that. So that got merged pretty shortly after the live stream. And then there were a few more tweaks needed. So we needed to pull some more dependencies. There was some work on getting installation from an SD card to work correctly. So there's more fixes around that. Then I also added logic to reload the modules, or at least attempt to, within the GPU support application, so that they would pick up the firmwares that are now being present. There were a couple more issues with kind of the version handling in the app build logic, so I had to fix that as that was causing some issues. So those are those commits. Some unrelated fixes to the network, the WireGuard config handling. And then Matthias landed the other half of the issue that was around the Linux firmware stuff, which was adding support for microcode updates. So that's the first commit of that. And if we go down and onto the more recent commits, that's the rest of that. So the reminder of the microcode support. That also needed a tweak in the handling of the software TPM, because we need to measure those microcode blobs. So that's been added. And then some cleanup to remove some legacy logic that we don't really need anymore. Even more cleanup, some more issues around handling of the version strings within the app build logic. So that's effectively like the third commit. I think that kind of fixes that logic since the GPU support thing was landed. I think we actually got it right at that point. Then so a bunch of tweaks towards the recovery environment. I think Matthias was doing some testing on his machine, and yeah, it was running into some issues when using the local provider with external updates, something like that. So effectively adding logic to know what keys are supposed to be trusted when validating recovery artifacts, and getting that to load properly, and also fixing some issues where if an update gets applied at that point, it should be treated like a normal update, which means like clearing some of the flags and updating some of the struct details. What else did we have around that? So they also added some more testing to handle the GPU support app and to fix an issue with one of the secure boot update we did recently. As we transitioned to the 2026 signing keys last week, that caused a few ripples that we had to deal with. On the iSCSI front, I just noticed on one of my machines it was getting, it would fail to handle Truna as iSCSI in some cases because there was some leftovers. So I did logic to clear all that stuff now automatically on startup. There was an issue with the Ethernet offload type flags that were swapped, so a community member fixed that, which was great. I've added something that most folks won't need to deal with when they're using IncusOS, but that is mostly relevant to the hypervisor OS, so the Video Fusion build of IncusOS, which is effectively supporting for authentication of a system with an image server. So for our builds and our customers, we run a private image server, and we need to know that a given system is like tied to a given customer and that it's trusted. And we handle that by effectively generating a key through the TPM and then having that sign some system details, including the machine ID, and shipping that as a header as a custom header to our image server. So we've added logic for that directly in IncusOS. Again, not useful for anyone just using IncusOS as it is, but can be useful if you're doing your own rebuild of IncusOS and you're running, your own image server and you want to similarly do some kind of restrictions on that, then you can do it with that logic. In our case, we're mostly trying to limit the number of changes that we have between the stock IncusOS and kind of the rebranded hypervisor OS as much as possible. We'd like it to mostly be just the name and different keys. So when we see things like that, like, okay, we can add the logic directly in IncusOS, it might be beneficial to others, even if the normal kind of community build that you would just download doesn't make use of that feature. Anyways, more of those kind of authentication related commits here. Then what do we get into? Still registration. Oh yeah, we added Wake Online a few weeks back. And one of the issues is that at least on some NICs, the Wake Online is really tied to the MAC address and not the physical MAC address, but the logical one. In the case of IncusOS, we reset the logical MAC address to a random MAC because we moved that logical MAC address to a bridge instead. That meant that Wake Online was effectively not working on those systems because the MAC address that you need to trigger the Wake Online would effectively be a random one that's different on every boot. So I did some logic to just restore the physical MAC address on shutdown so that the Wake Online feature can work properly. And we've had, I think, confirmation on the forum this morning that this works properly now for that user. So that's great. Few more tweaks around Secure Boot. We noticed some environments that are effectively not compliant. So they would boot with Secure Boot measured as being enabled, but then in audit mode. And audit mode allows every key, so that's not really Secure Boot enabled. So anyways, we've added some more checks for that and effectively refuse boot if we see it, to just try and avoid having completely broken, environments with pretty broken security. Still on GPU support, I actually had to go one step further when I did some testing on my laptop, because the Intel GPU driver, you can't just unload and reload it. It needs to actually be fully detached from the GPU first, and then you can unload and reload. So I did some extra logic for that. We'll actually be able to test that just later. I've not tested the resulting image yet on my laptop to confirm that it works. So we'll be able to do that and just check that all the firmware files and things show up as missing initially, and then the application comes up and they get reloaded and then they're all found. It will most likely cause a screen flicker when that happens because we're literally detaching the console and everything from the accelerated GPU driver, moving that back to a basic VGA driver, and then reloading the driver, which will take things over again. That shouldn't really be a problem. If it is on some platforms, then we're going to have to put some extra checks and logic in place. But at least in my testing, that seemed fine. We've been working with a customer that does boot from SAN using Fiber Channel over Ethernet. So there was some missing drivers, so we've been dealing with that. There's also some other issues related to that are open around multipathing, for example, that we need to look at. Then what do we have? Yes, we had some issues on a few systems. I think that didn't like the transition from the 2025 to 2026 signing key and triggered a recovery passphrase prompt. I think so far everyone who had it had the passphrase backed up as we recommend they do, so that worked out. But we would like to understand why that prompt happened in the first place, because we do predict expected new values and effectively have those automatically boot. So yeah, something weird happened, and we couldn't immediately figure out what that was or reproduce it on any of our machines. So instead, we've added some new APIs. So if it happens again on a system, we'll be able to actually pull useful event log from the TPM and compare with our expected state and see what's going on. Did some more fixes around the MMC, so SD card installed. There are like some built-in partitions on eMMC flash that was causing some issues, so we have the logic to ignore those now. And I think we've confirmed we can actually install and boot from a eMMC now on some systems, so that's good. I've been doing some more testing, actually redeploying my production cluster at home on new servers. So I basically moved from, it was like an AMD EPYC 24 cores, 48 threads, combined with a older Intel platform that was, I think, also 24 cores, 48 threads, and then a 45 cores ARM server. That was kind of running low on resources, especially with things like the online demos and all that kind of stuff, and the GitHub self-hosted runners we have, and a whole bunch of demo environments and all that kind of stuff. So I added 2 new servers this year and upgraded all of the AMD EPYC CPUs to 64 cores, 128 threads SKUs that I found for pretty cheap on eBay. So now I effectively moved from a single 24 core 48 threads to 3 times 64 cores 128 threads on the AMD side. And I'm now retiring the older Intel system because that system is actually not going to be supported by IncusOS, as its CPU is slightly too old by like literally a few months. So yeah, that machine is going to turn into most likely a NAS, and the cluster will only be AMD or ARM servers in it. All right, as mentioned, like there was like a boot from some stuff on Cisco server, so there's more fixes for Cisco to just hide a bunch of internal devices that don't make sense to expose. The audit mode thing that Matthias did a bit earlier was slightly too aggressive, so we've had to roll back to push another small fix on top of it. And then the documentation fix. And those literally merged like just a few minutes ago, so they're all still going through testing here. All right, so that's the current state of IncusOS. We actually have a build that's happening right now, I think. Yeah, it's tagged here and it's currently building. So this is going to be available in testing in a few minutes. That's just picking up some of those more recent fixes, and then we'll be able to push that to stable. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is actually check the GPU support. So I'm just gonna go and open a terminal here and go look. Oh, and if you see me make a bunch of typos, I broke my space bar yesterday. So I'm waiting for a new keyboard to arrive. Right now I need to hit it right in the middle because the right stabilizer just got ripped off the board. So I'm gonna make a few more typos than usual, most likely. So let's do admin os debug log on the laptop, I think is the name. No, just laptop. Just laptop. Failed to verify. Yeah, so the laptop got reinstalled. I need to remove that remote and just add it back. I'm gonna add it back as dev laptop because that's my current pattern anyways. Add dev laptop, and then the IP address is correct. It's just and it's using OIDC authentication now, thanks to the integration with the forum. So I just need to go and verify security key, allow. There we go. Okay. So that should be added now. If I do the debug log, here we go. And let's go look at i915. So that's the GPU in that machine. For the current boot, let me do B0 just to make sure we only select the current boot. Okay. Did I show my keyboard at the wall? No, I just had to unplug it and move it back and forth a bunch of times because I was reinstalling some servers and I was missing a keyboard for that. And apparently just carrying it around the room and holding it on the spacebar got it like moving kind of sideways and ripped out the right stabilizer for that key. And it's basically got half the stabilizer stuck deep inside the keycap, and the other part that used to be on the board is not on the board anymore. So it doesn't look like I can easily crazy glue this thing back together, unfortunately. So I just ended up getting another keyboard. I was also not super happy with the battery life and wireless performance of that keyboard. I've been running it effectively wired now for 6 months, or more possibly. Like Keychron, which is what I'm using right now, make pretty good boards, but yeah, this one had some troubles. Like the wireless, the battery for wireless mode in there was swelling, so I had to replace it once, and then the replacement battery only lasts a day basically, making it pretty pointless. So I've got another brand. I don't actually remember the brand now. Coming I think tomorrow, and that one doesn't use Bluetooth only. It uses also its own 2.4 gigahertz transmitter, and says it's supposed to have like 2 weeks or something. So anyways. You just mentioned about using a Jet KVM. Yeah, I do have one of those. Actually, I have a bunch of different KVM options. I just needed something quick and easy. So I do have a Jet KVM, but the Jet KVM is HDMI. Servers don't do HDMI typically. They do VGA. And I was too lazy to walk to the other building to go pick up a VGA to HDMI adapter. When I had a perfectly good display right there that I could just connect to over VGA. And then the only problem was missing the keyboard, so that's why I just moved my keyboard from one desk to another. Yeah, and actually, if I had wanted, I could have carried the server up the stairs here, because on the second floor I've got a Avocent 48 ports, VGA and everything KVM that I could have used, but then I would have needed to actually carry the heavy server that's like half open and everything up the stairs and clear some space. And yeah, again, laziness. It was easier to just put it on the table and bring the keyboard that was around. And yeah, it would have all been fine if it wasn't for probably a pretty dodgy stabilizer hook thing that was not properly attached to begin with, and it just snapping off. Anyways, so looking at my laptop here, we see a few things. I'm actually I'm tempted to just reboot it to get a clear read. But if we look, we should see normally firmware prompts. Yeah, I think we got a bunch of updates kind of applied one on top of the other, and that makes it slightly harder to read. So on initial boot, that's what we see at the top, failed to load DMC firmware. So that happened. Then still during that boot, the same timestamp, it got tied to a HDMI device, to a PCI device, then loaded and everything. And then there was an attempt to unload it at that point, which failed. That's when I noticed I needed extra logic. Then I rotated extra logic, and I think that's probably what we're seeing here with an unload. But some of that stuff might have been done by hand for testing. I think most of that actually has been. So let me just reboot it. Admin OS system reboot dev laptop. Here we go. Then we're gonna get a clean slate, and it should be a lot clearer. Like on boot, we should see it load initially, and then get the driver unloaded and reloaded with the firmware. That's what we're supposed to be seeing. That's because the firmware, the way we distribute it is through a systemd system extension, and it's therefore not available in early boot when the module first loads, so we need to unload and reload. So that's what that logic is for. That laptop is not the fastest thing in the world when it comes to booting IncusOS. I expect it's gonna take a little while. Just start the ping to see when it's actually back online. Okay. And while that's going on, let's go look at the topic for this live stream. So it's, as mentioned, it's basically looking at my lab and reinstalling some physical servers. So I do have, where is it? Operations, there we go, operations in my dev environment. If I go here, I can see I've got a bunch of systems. I've got Operations Center itself, I've got Migration Manager. Like everything is deployed with OIDC, so I can just click and log in and everything works. I've got the VMware vSphere as well. It's currently offline, but that's available for migration testing. And then I've got a first cluster of 3 VMs. That's what we can see here. And then another cluster of 3 physical machines, and it's those 3. Now, if we go look at the cluster list and we hit the first cluster, this is definitely for testing, it's got a bunch of different things in there. I can actually see IncusOS is broken. Is it fixed yet? Nope, still unavailable. And same thing with that. Same thing with that. Okay. So it's I mostly use it for storage testing right now. It's got a whole bunch of different storage pools, from local to using TrueNAS to using LVM cluster over a variety of remote backends. So effectively iSCSI, NVMe, or a fake fiber channel. And it also has support for linstore. I need to still add Ceph to the mix, and then I will actually have everything added. That cluster also has support for Oven, so that's effectively an IncusOS cluster with both physical networking, you can see two VLANs here, as well as using a VXLAN mesh for some system services, a normal Incus bridge on each machine for testing NAT, and then there's a Oven network here called default that's also used, and the instances are kind of spread across those different options. If I hide description, there we go. You can see the IP addresses. Anything in 172.17 is going to be on a physical network, and the 10 dot stuff is going to be either Oven or one of the other bridges. So that's for the virtual cluster that I've got for testing. And then, as mentioned, I've got a physical one as well. So those are those servers. They're part of the Linux Containers Labs, and they're pretty beefy. So they're basically AMD EPYC 7C13. So they're 64 cores, 128 threads. Not quite the same CPUs as I'm using in my own cluster I mentioned earlier, but very similar specs. They have, I think, 256 gigs of RAM each, and they've got dual 100 gigabit Ethernet for networking. Now, what I wanted to do here is basically they're going to need to be redeployed. So for that, what I will do is just do cluster 2, and then you can do delete, and you can do factory reset, and the machines just get effectively reset back to a clean IncusOS. They re-register with Operation Center, and we can deploy them again. We're gonna do that, but first I want to look at. Well, actually, no, we can do that initially because it's gonna take a little while, and then we're gonna take a look at how to configure the fast networking on them. Because basically what I don't like with my current cluster, because it is a functional cluster, I can actually access that right now. Don't need that. There we go. Login with SSO. Here we go. And that cluster is fine, but the whole point of those machines is that they have 200 gigabit connectivity. And currently the entire cluster is assembled on top of a single non-redundant gigabit link. That doesn't make a ton of sense. So I want to redeploy it so that I've got the management address on just the management interface, the gigabit one, but then the cluster address and storage and all of those roles are all moved on the dual 100 gig instead. All right, so as mentioned, need to reinstall them. I'm just gonna make a note first because every time I forget to do that and every time I regret it, getting the actual network config they currently have so I can easily reapply it afterwards. So let me just get a shell here and just write this text file. So that's what's Azuras, do that. It's actually a very simple config, but anyways, ntac, it's the next one. Sure, so that's ntac. Okay. And Verona, I think, is the last one. Indeed, there we go. Get that configure here. And here we go. Okay, so now that this is done, I can do cluster 02 and nuke that cluster. It might be interesting to just see what actually happens on the server. So if I open the remote console on one of them in the lab, there we go, and we do remote control and the VGA console. So they're currently running, yeah, IncusOS just fine. Now, if we go back to Operations Center, I don't need that one, don't need that one. Okay, that was the one I was using to nuke everything. So let's do factory reset, go. We see it's rebooting the server. So it effectively sent the factory reset commands through IncusOS on all 3 servers. And they're going to be rebooting and then registering as new effectively. So I think we've had some questions at some point recently of like, why does IncusOS not make it easy to reinstall itself effectively? Like if you try to boot an IncusOS install image and you already have IncusOS installed on the machine, it will just flat out refuse to do anything unless you manually go and wipe the drive. This is the reason, is that like in 99% of cases, you don't need to. You just do a factory reset, the machine will automatically wipe everything, come back up exactly as if it would be freshly installed, will pull its updates and move on. So we effectively make it hard to just reinstall IncusOS because the likelihood of that being needed is very low. And so the likelihood of it being accidentally used and then wiping the system is pretty high. So that's why we've done it that way. Anyways, yeah, that server is rebooting. It's gonna boot back into IncusOS in a few seconds and then register itself again, and then we'll be able to put new network config and create a new cluster on there. In the meantime, the laptop is responding again, so we can go look at that. Let's look at the log for i915. There we go. Okay, so this time it's a bit cleaner. So we can see the actual boot loading is here. And we can see indeed it's complaining about the missing firmware. And then a few seconds later, so around 40 seconds later in this case, we can see that it's getting reloaded effectively. And this time it loads perfectly with no firmware error whatsoever. So that's how that works, at least on that Intel NIC. The same logic is present for both AMD and NVIDIA. So hopefully this works everywhere. If there's some issues, we'll be dealing with those like on a card by card basis or driver by driver basis to make it work. All right, let's go back to those servers and see what's going on. IncusOS is starting, so this should soon get on the network and then register itself. And then I'm gonna need to refresh my memory on what the 100 gig network config looks like. I don't remember what VLANs those machines are on and what the subnets are and that kind of stuff. So I'll need to take a quick look. Okay, so it's getting initialized. And here we go. So we see the server registered with the provider. So that means it's gonna have shown up again in Operations Center. We go back here, servers, yeah, 2 out of 3 are there, 3 out of 3 are there. There's actually the main reason for changing the network config is that they're registering over IPv4, which is normally not allowed, which is why they're stuck in pending state. I had that problem before, and basically I had to put a temporary rule on my gateway to allow it. I think it's on this one. Okay. Which one is that? 200. Yeah, that's that one. So that allows this network to then talk correctly. So we should be able to refresh data on all 3. There we go, and they're ready. Okay, so that's a temporary hack, and then we can put the correct network config in place, and they will move to IPv6. So this machine, MAC address for ENO1, where is it? ENO1. Here, MAC address is 0D0A. So who are we dealing with? So I'm looking for Azuras first. Okay, that's not it. 0D0A, we said. Nope. Yes. Okay, so this is Verona we're dealing with. So let's do that. Rename. Okay. and then we can get that initial config and just tweak it a bit. Oops. To match what we actually need on there. Here we go. So this is just going to be management. So I don't want actually cluster or storage on it. So those roles will need to be moved to another NIC. We can just remove the two roles for now and then get back later. So that's effectively pushing a new config and asking it to re-register, like to update its registrations through this new path. Okay, so that's good. And now if we look, Valona is on IPv6 and ready. So we're good. Next up, who's this one? MAC address on the NO1 is 8E4A. I think that's, this one is a Suras. It is. So let's copy the relevant part of the config and rename it. There. There we go, and pushing the new config. And that will leave us with NTalk. Go. So rename that and then put its config in place. Here we go. Updated and we're good. So those three are now ready to go. And as mentioned, the next step is basically figuring out the fast 100 gig network cards. So if we look down there, we've got this guy here and this guy here. Those are gonna be the 100 gig cards. We can actually see the link is 100, but state is degraded because they're not actually doing anything right now. So let's go and pull the MAC addresses from these two guys. Usually they're sequential, so that's 9AC8 and C9. Okay, that works. Now let's put at least a basic config in place for that. Let me maybe make that a bit bigger. What we want is a bond. So we're gonna call it, I don't know, because the one is management. Let's call that uplink, I guess. Members, so that's gonna be the MAC addresses. We want this one, that one. Then we need the mode, so that's LECP. MTU, so 9000 typically on those kind of fast links. And do I need anything else? So I've got the name, members, so we're gonna have the roles as well. So that's gonna be instances, storage, and cluster. Okay, we can turn on LLDP as well, which I should have turned on in the other one as well, so I'm gonna do that on both. Okay, and as mentioned, actually this one we should fix its MTU just so we know, so it's 1500 on this one. I don't actually remember the VLAN and IP config right now, so I'm gonna go and check that real quick. So it's on, it's rack lab, I think. Lab rack probably. On switches for this side. Yeah, I don't need to repeat that. There we go. Okay. So what does that look like? Interface print. Okay. So Zuras is here. So it's on port 2 and 6. And what does that look like as far as the bridge config on there? Okay, so it's pretty straightforward bridge config. It's got the management VLAN and then both management and uplink. So it's VLAN 3002. I don't know if I've got an active router on that VLAN actually. Doesn't really matter, we can just look at that. And the port configs themselves, they don't have, okay, so everything is tagged. There's no untagged VLAN on there. Okay, can make that work. Let's go and look at that then. Like I know what the subnet is just based on the VLAN ID, so that's convenient. Oops. So I need to add a VLAN entry name. Let's call it cluster, I guess. And then addresses on there is gonna be, and what did we say, 3002 for that VLAN? Yeah, 3002. 3002, and then let's do 100 or 101 for the first server. Let's do something out. And then I need to do the VLAN ID, so 3002, and it's on top of the uplink. And just checking, so that one should have a high MTU, I'm pretty sure. I'm just not sure if it actually have a router that's doing anything on that network. Let me see. So if I go on one of my routers, do I actually have 3002 set up? Yeah, I do. Okay, 3002 is here, set up with a jumbo frame MTU, so that's good. And do I have an IP address on it? Yeah, I do. Okay, so it is functional with a router and everything. The state is down, but that's probably because this is not the active router. The other one is handling it. Okay, so that's fine. Let's do this 3002 1001 MTU 9000. And actually the role for this should have instances, but storage and cluster should be directly on this link here. So cluster and then storage should all go here. Okay, that should be fine, I think. I'm just gonna copy that section to kind of reuse on the others, but let's go and apply it on this one, see if that works. Okay, server updated, that's good. Let's see. Just force a refresh just to make sure we got everything in sync. And now if we go look down here and look at the state. So state 200 gig, so the bond is up. Some packets, so that's the VLAN there. Management, so the management we can see it's talking to the management switch on port 17. That's good. And then if we look at the uplinks, there we go, 2 ports in the bond. One is talking to port 21 on the switch and the other one on 11. Okay, so that's fine. 2 times 100 gig, link is up. Okay, so that's working. Oh, there's a question around the MTU values. And basically MTU is the max transmit unit. On particularly fast links, you benefit quite a bit in being able to send packets larger than 1500. 1500 is basically the default for the internet. Like the public route, the public MTU on the internet is 1500. And so on normal consumer networks and normal kind of access subnets, so the things that talk directly to the internet or that get direct ingress from the internet, you tend to go with 1500 just so you don't need to deal with figuring out that like, oh, actually I'm routing to the internet, I need to then shrink it on the way out. But when you're dealing with very fast network, in this case, the clustering traffic or the storage traffic, which is internal, doesn't really hit the internet, then that's when you can bump the MTU quite a bit up, in this case to 9000, allowing for 9000 bytes to be sent as a single packet on the network, which when you're doing storage over it, really matters. Like you can make things go a fair bit faster by doing that. Okay, so config, yeah, like we basically want a replica of that config on the other 2 machines with just the MAC addresses changed. So I'm gonna take that config and then do ntark and Verona config. Okay, so that's the new config. Can wipe that, and then we just take the MAC addresses and fill in the blanks, as well as fix the host name. So this is ntarc. I need its management MAC address. Management MAC is this guy. Let's go here, put that in. There we go. And then I need the 2 MAC addresses from the fastNIC. So it's this, and it's again sequential, so I can just do that and that. And the IP address, the static one here, we're just gonna bump that to 102. That should be it. So again, I'm just gonna take that config because when I need a copy of that for the last server, but if I apply that, we should be good. And then go here, Verona. Again, basically wipe its config, put the new one in place, and then pick the MAC address for the management NIC, which is this one. Okay, change the host name, and then okay, this one doesn't show any other NICs, so that's kind of confusing. What is going on here? I'm just gonna do a refresh, see if we're missing some data somehow. What's data? What do we have? Yeah, that's weird. It's not showing the... It's not showing the 100 gig NICs. Did they show up in hardware data? That's always a bit of a long one. So network, there we go. So that's USB. Okay, there we go. That's the 100 NIC, gig NIC. First port, second port, okay. 2C and 2D. So I don't know why it didn't show up in config. Anyway, that's the MAC address we need. So if we go back, and where is it? That was ntarc. That's Verona, okay, but I'm missing. I thought I had mostly prepared the config already. Okay, fine. I guess I moved away to a different page and then forgot. So let's just do it again. Putting that in place instead. There we go. The management NIC, that one we had listed correctly, so let's pick that. Management NIC, hardware address, there we go. So this is Verona. And then I need the other MAC address that I found in here. Come on. 100 gig, there we go. So this guy. I want this here. 2C, 2D. And that's going to be 103. That should be fine. Let's save that. Okay, it applied. So if we go back here, now we look at all 3. The state should show that they are configured now, hopefully. State, yeah, cluster 200 gig with the correct address. This one, does that show? State, okay, this one doesn't matter, you know. Yeah, but sometimes it's not updating correctly. It's like Operation Center is looking at slightly out of date data somehow. That's interesting. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's still applied. But let's go see. So if I ping, okay, 101 is good, 102 is good, 103 is good. Yeah, so they're all responding correctly. I just don't like that the state in operation center is incorrect for them. Because it matters to me that they pick the right address when they cluster, and I'm not convinced that they would if the state is incorrect in here. Okay, so now Velona is correct. The state is fine. Let's see. Did NTAC update as well? Are we good now? Yeah, we're good. Okay, excellent. So on to the next step, which is actually creating a cluster with these guys and see if they do the right thing. Because I've not actually made, like in theory, the logic should be to pick the cluster interface when assembling a cluster. And I've not actually done that before. I'm just kind of trusting that this is what we've implemented in logic, but I've not actually tested it myself. So this would be a good test. I need some initial seed data for Incus. So it's basically just the initial keys to trust in here. Okay, so the 3 servers as cluster 02 and create. So that's basically generating a bunch of Terraform config and then running it. Okay, so the server is, the cluster is configured, and we should be able to just hit that, unless the IP addresses are different. The IP addresses might have changed. I might need to go and change the load balancer, maybe. Or actually, it might be even different. It might be that the IP addresses are correct, but I need to configure proxy protocol in the config on the cluster. So anyway, yeah, I'm on the cluster. IP addresses, that is incorrect. Okay, so we're gonna need to do a fix in operation center. Like it should have picked the 3002 IP address, not the 3000. Like we're effectively back to having all of the cluster traffic go through the wrong path, which is not what we want to see here. So I mentioned like maybe syntax highlighting for network config and test. Yeah, so we do, I believe for most of those, we do validation on send. Like the server can actually do the unpack and validation. It's a bit tricky because we let you enter it as YAML, but then we transport it as JSON on the validation side. So yeah, like I think it's still a bit in flux, the exact config options and everything in IncusOS. Like there's still a lot of changes happening pretty often, but having like a JSON schema that can be shipped and can be used for validation would be good. The other thing we're obviously planning on doing is having the web form lets you build most of the YAML just by filling in different options. We can do like, add an interface, add a bond, add a VLAN, fill in a form, save, and that puts the config together for you with an option to still go and look at the YAML version and modify it yourself. So yeah, that didn't work as expected. We can go and take a look at our operation center's codes to see if we can immediately find what the problem is. So if I go code, Future Fusion Operation Center. Okay, apparently I had local changes that I don't care about, so let's blow everything away. And then go look at the code. So, anyway, first thing first, I'm gonna need to reset everything to try again. So I'm gonna need to back up the configs of all 3 servers. Let's do that. Just to save myself the trouble after a factory reset. Then we can trigger a factory reset again and have the config around to restore afterwards. So that's the first server, second server. Well, then second, and then last, this guy. We've got some helpers in the code to select based on roles, and it should have selected based on the cluster role. Instead, it looks like it's selected based on the management role, which is wrong. So I'm hoping this is literally a one-line fix in Operation Center to fix that, but we'll see. So cluster 2 is factory reset again. Go. So it's gonna wipe those machines, and in here, let's go look for what's the function. So it's a function that's actually in the IncusOS code base, in IncusOS the API, and then in here it's where is it? In probably system network, maybe. I think that's what we've done basically, is that it's on. It should be on here maybe. Oh yeah, there we go. Get interface by role. Names by role. So let's see if this is in use within this code base. It is, and it's looking for cluster. Okay, so that didn't work. Interesting. That logic looks correct. Interesting. What's going on? Detect cluster interface. Okay, but where is it using that? The first interface that has the role cluster. Okay, but just returns the. No, it returns the network. Okay, so presumably it's getting the IP address from that. No, it returns a string. Okay, so I think I know where this is used. This is probably used for the tunneling, for the internal network, which is good. That should be used for that. But I think, oh yeah, okay, I think I know what's going on. Let me check. Git grep get management. No, what's it named? Because we've got another function that gets us the management IP address basically, and I wonder if that's what it's using. But that might be an internal function like management address. Yeah, I think it's internal to IncusOS. Yeah, it is. Okay, so that's not, it can't be used by Operation Center. Where is it getting the IP address? Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I know what it's doing. That might be slightly harder to fix than I thought. Basically what I'm thinking it's doing now is it's probably using the connection URL. So it's probably using that. Okay. We can make that work, I think. We're just gonna need to tweak the configs a bit. Basically, we need to get rid of the management interface entirely. That kind of slow gigabit interface, we just need to get rid of that. And move everything to the 200 gig NIC. So that basically means the bond, yeah, we keep that, but management moves over down here. And then this interface just disappears completely. And instead, we're gonna need to do some magic on there. I'm not sure what the config is for that network. It might have, I don't think it would have DHCP, but maybe it does. Let me check. While the machines are still reinstalling. DNS mask. Do I run DHCP on that VLAN here? No, there's no DHCP on the VLAN 3000 and up. So no. Next question is, do I provide router advertisements on there? Routing. So 3002 we said. IPv6. Okay. No auto config. So the answer is no. Those subnets are meant to be managed by MAS, it looks like, even though it's not managing them anymore. So I might need to change that actually. With a config kind of closer to this one. And that's fine. And then so that's 3001 on this one. Because yeah, it's got the managed config flag, which means it's supposed to be using DHCP v6, and there's no DHCP v6 server on that network at all, so that's not gonna work. So 2 and 3, like that. So now there should be router advertisements through this router. I just need to do the same thing on the other one. Okay. So we base it off this one. It's 3000. So need to be careful not to mess with 3000. 3000 is the active MAS network. That one should not be touched. It's just 3001 and up that needs to be modified. 3001. Okay, so that's 3 and 2. Okay, so that should be fine. Reload that. So that should actually advertise a default router and DHCP and DNS. So that will make our life slightly easier. So we don't need to specify literally everything in there. Technically, it means we don't even need to do the addresses stuff here. We can just do Slack. And yeah, there's not going to be any DHCP 6. It's just Slack. That should be fine. Okay, so that should be a new config for Azuras. Do the same thing here. Get rid of the management interface. Just little OCD here. And the last one, same thing. Just drop that. Dump it here. Stateless autoconfig. Okay. So with a bit of luck, that will actually work. Let's see. Did they show up again? They did. Okay, who's that one? So 6C to C. From what I remember last time, this was this guy. Oh, we can't actually tell. That's funny. Right, so to figure it out, I'm gonna have to actually go look at their live console because I don't have their MAC addresses to match them that way anymore. I don't know that they exposed their host name anywhere in the OS resource data we're getting back. So let's see if I go on this guy. Azuras is D37. Okay, so if I go here, D37, this is Azuras, rename, and then I want its config. So let's put that in and see if that works. Submit. It's taking long. It taking long is never a great sign. What does that look like? Cluster. Okay, we did get. It's weird that it chose the IP address twice, but yeah, we did get an IPv6 address. Azuras. Okay, yeah, it did register correctly, and we've got the new IP on the 3002 VLAN. Yay! Okay, so that worked. Now we need to figure out the one of the other two, and then can guess what the third one is based on that. So here we go. Remote console. what's its host name? 7CF is NTAC. So if we go here, 7CF, there, and now config for NTAC. Get that config. Put that in place. Save this guy. And based on that, we can guess the last one. Actually, I forgot to rename it, so I still need to do that on it. So that's Verona here. Rename, new config. Go. Submit, and now just check that the servers are changing. So IncusOS is good. This one still needs a rename. NTAC. There. Now IncusOS and NTAC are good. Verona is good too. They're all ready with the correct IP addresses for the management side. Oh. Yeah, okay, I see what the problem is. Well, a problem anyways. I did make a typo when I was messing with the routers. So that's why they've got two IP addresses, is because the two routers don't agree with each other. The MAS subnet, well, the lab subnets are supposed to be on the B side, not on A. Not on C. I just need to change that. Did I... Yeah, it's all kind of wrong, isn't it? B, B, and B. Okay. Reloading that. Now I'm gonna have a slight issue that this one is not gonna be super reachable. Would be my guess. Yeah, unable to connect. This is working, right? Yeah, this is working right too. I kind of want them all rebooted though. Just clean up that mess. So I'm gonna do that. Go look at all of them. We're gonna have the next build of Operation Center is gonna actually have a button to reboot servers, but we don't currently have it. So I'm just gonna go and do it the old-fashioned way. Reset, go. Power control, reset, go, and power control, reset, go. All right. So just waiting for those three to reboot. And they should all show up with their B3002 IP addresses. They should all be reachable, at which point can cluster, and they should actually be on the properly fast network. Once they are, we can just play by... I guess the easiest would be to create, to just put some instances on, say, the uplink VLAN or something or not, and do like an hyper from one to another to see what we're getting. We should be if we're running containers, we should be getting close to 100 gigabit, which is the maximum link speed of one of the two ports. If we're doing VMs, then you need to pass quite a few CPUs and amount of memory and stuff to make that work. But I think we've done 80 gigabit-ish from inside of a VM before. But first, let's see if we can actually cluster these guys on the correct network. And in the meantime, I should actually open an issue on Operation Center to automatically pick the correct interface. So that we can still have a management address that's on a separate network than the clustered address effectively. Okay, let's put that on the next milestone. It's let's do a bug fix, I think. When clustering, use address from the interface with cluster. Cluster role and pick yeah, something like that. Okay, so we should keep track of that. Now those servers, do I still have the console open? Yeah, system ready. So they have rebooted. They're all registered with B, so that's good. Now let's go and create a cluster again. So create cluster, cluster 02, cluster 02, then that. Okay, I need the seed data again. And Incus, this guy. Application seed and create. Let's go. Then I'm gonna need to just grab from the OIDC provider the actual token for SSO on this one. Oh, interesting. I need to go fix that URL. It doesn't have the HTTPS. Should fix that. There we go. Cluster are good. And then I should be able to add the cluster at this point through any of the IP addresses here. Oops, any of those IP addresses here. So I'll just do that. Incus remote add cluster 02. This. Okay. And now I need to just grab the config from Citadel. So we want cluster 02. This is the connection. This is the client ID. Let me just do does that work? No. I don't have those remotes set up on this machine. Is that the issue? Yeah, okay, that's the issue. Remote add dev cluster 01, cluster 01. Okay, grant access, we're good. Okay, so I just wanted to get some of the details from that machine and set that up here. So export Incus remote cluster 02 Incus project default Incus config edit. All right. So there's a bunch of config in here. Most of which doesn't actually apply here, but anyways, the Acme stuff needs some tweaks in the load balancer, but that should be fine if I do it before I save. Cluster HTTPS address, obviously we don't touch. Core HTTPS address, we don't touch. The volumes, we don't touch. Lin store doesn't matter in this case. Oven doesn't matter. This one has a different client ID. That's what I was grabbing off screen earlier. So just need to put this one in. This is fine. This is like a burst. We don't do BGP basically now. HTTP port. Okay, that seems plausibly correct. I just need to go and mess with the load balancer real quick. So cluster 02 is here, and the IP addresses have changed, so I just need to update that. Let's go here. So Azuras is here. That didn't go well. Okay. This is NTAG. And lastly, Verona is this guy. Okay. So just reconfiguring the load balancer here so that it actually points to those machines, and the rest of the config hopefully is good. So if I save that, it should be able to issue a new certificate and then configure YDC, hopefully. Let's see. Yep, okay, so that's cleared, good. So in theory, that means that now if I can close stuff up here, I should be able to just do one tab on the first cluster, one tab on the other cluster. Yes, first cluster, second cluster is logged in, log in with the forum, and everything's working. Yay. Okay, now on the networking side, I don't remember if we can do VLANs directly in here. I don't think so. So I might need to do create. So looking at physical based on the uplink interface, that's good. And we just call it VLAN 3003 was the other VLAN. Then if I do the config here, it's parent, and parent would be uplink, and then VLAN is 3002. Just missing the UI for that. Let's see if that works. Yeah, VLAN 3003 now exists. And let's get a couple of instances on that. So Debian, Trixie here. We want it as a VM. No, container is actually better for testing. Let's do that. Container, call that C1. And network, just need to override this guy. ETH0 should go to VLAN 3003. Yep, go. Okay, creating unpacking. Here we go, it's running. Now do a second one, C2. Browse images, pick up the same image. It's a container, we're good. And then override network, again, same thing. ETH0 on 3003, we're good. And go. The network doesn't have IPv4, so I'm not surprised that this is not showing up. It should have IPv6 though. Not that it seems to detect it, but it's supposed to have IPv6. Okay, let's see what's going on. C1, terminal, ETH0, okay, that's fine. Yeah, it doesn't look like we're seeing anything in there. Oh, yeah, I know why. Never mind. This is because I'm an idiot. I did not configure those servers to have access to VLANs other than the one that's deployed on. So I need to actually go on the bond here and do VLAN tags, and then 3003 is what we want access to. So just do that. taking a second to apply, seems like. Anyway, I can go. Yeah, Azure is pending. Okay, so waiting for NTAG. Same deal. Bond VLAN tags. Send. Okay, now NTAG is pending. Verona. Same thing. Okay, send. Okay, so the NTAG is good. I'm waiting for Verona. Okay, we're good. So let's see. If we refresh things, IP. Yeah, we've got an IPv6 address now. On both of them, I'm hoping. At least C1 has noticed, C2 maybe not yet. So let's just stop them both and start them back up. So stopping. Okay, and start back. So anyways, if we go on this guy, I want a terminal. Okay, install iperf 3. Don't need to rent as a service, just install it. There we go. Second tab, I want C2, which is still not getting an IP address. Why not? What's going on here? Yeah, it's on VLAN 3003. And where is it running? Not telling me where it's running. It's running on NTAG, okay. So it should have been fine. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm just gonna try and move it to Verona and start it back up there, see if that fixes it. Might be some bad network config somewhere. Okay, move it. Verona, go. Okay, and start it back over there. And see if that works better. Maybe I messed up something in the copy paste on those other servers somehow. I don't know. Nope, still not. This is interesting. Why isn't that working? So cluster 2, that's the same one, but command line. Yeah, I need to remove the remote and add it back. Dev cluster 02. Okay, wherever that prompt is here. Okay, and so what do we have? 2 instances, they're running, it's fine. Network list, I want to check if there's some VLAN config missing or something on that VLAN. So VLAN 3003, target, Suras, okay, NTAG, okay, Verona. Okay, it's looking good on all of them, so that's not the issue. Admin OS system network show on Azure. VLANs, VLAN tags. Okay, see them here. NTAG. It's missing the config. Okay, well that's a problem. Not sure why it disappeared on us, but that would be a problem. So 3003 needs to be in here. Save. While this is going on, let's do Verona. Yeah, we need to wait. Okay, fine. Verona, apply it, save. And that should fix those instances finally. Don't know why it didn't save properly. Maybe I put it with the wrong indent or something. It got dropped. Okay, it's saved now. So Just reboot it, but it should be able to pick it up now, hopefully. Yay! Okay, so that's working correctly at last. The IP address of this guy is here. Okay, I'm not sure why I can't do copy paste, but sure. That's gonna be annoying. Middle click doesn't work either, so that's great. Okay, this time I can do copy. Good. IPv3 running on this guy. IPv3 normal single stream client on this one. And iperf, I need to actually install it too. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. We are getting 27 gigabit per second single stream. Okay. Just checking the settings. What are we doing? Yeah, MTU 9000. Okay, so that's good. Let's do multi-stream. So 4 streams in parallel. There we go, 94 gigabit per second. That's more like it. And because of the default hashing we've got on the NICs, I don't think we're going to be able to get any faster, because even though there are 2 NICs, 200 gig ports, it's going to route the streams through one of the 2 and so be limited to 100 gig. Yeah, 98.5 gigabit per second. That's going to be as fast as we're going to get it, I think. I'm actually looking at tweaking the transmit balancing options on the bonds in IncusOS to be able to get faster speeds on that, and hopefully get us to balance the streams. Like effectively, in this case, I'm running 8 streams, so hopefully trying to get and balance those across the 2 ports so that we can get closer to the 200 gigabit. But yeah, that's basically it. We got, like you've seen me do, what, like 2 or 3 redeploy of that physical cluster. It's now running on the network that uses jumbo frames on bonded 200 gig networking, and it's added to effectively like my dev environment, so I can easily just connect to the cluster and mess with it. I think I just noticed that I made a typo now, because they're all reporting as cluster 1, which is wrong. The UI title should be cluster 2 in here, just to make it slightly nicer in the UI, because this one is actually cluster 1, this is cluster 2. Cluster 2, okay, they updated. There we go. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it there. So hopefully that was interesting to see. That cluster, now that it's running on the proper NICs, will let me test some other stuff. I want to test LinStore specifically on those machines, because they've got some fast SSDs and now I've got very fast networking. So I want to see what kind of throughput I can realistically get on storage used in this particular environment. Like if we go and look at storage show on one of them, system storage show. Oops, typo. Come on, that's my spacebar not working. There we go. Yeah, we've got, so the boot drive itself. Which one is the boot drive? That's the boot drive. So the boot drive is an NVMe, Samsung NVMe, 2 terabytes. I think 2 terabytes was this. I don't actually see the size. Serial number, capacity in bytes. No, 1 terabyte. Then we've got some, well, this is virtual storage stuff, we don't care. And then Samsungs, there's a bunch of them that are each, what's the capacity in this on these guys? For capacity, 2 terabytes. So 1, 2, 3, I think there's 4. Yeah, 4 2 terabytes Samsung enterprise SSDs that are in the server. So should be able to effectively create a Z pool, like a RAID Z1 with those, and then feed that to LinStore, and then see what kind of throughput we can get out of LinStore on that. So that's kind of the idea anyways. effectively being able to use those pretty beefy machines to test some of those performance characteristics, which is particularly useful when you're then working with some, like in our case, customers, production users that are running some pretty beefy machines too, to just make sure that Operation Center and our logic just gets us like to use as much of the performance available on those systems. All right, so I'm gonna leave it there. If anyone's got any questions or anything about this stuff, feel free to leave them down below in the comment section, or can come on the community forum, hang out there with us. And next week is an Incus release week, so I'm not gonna be doing any live stream there. The week after that, I'm gonna be traveling to Brussels for FOSDEM, so also won't be doing any live stream that week. And that puts the next live stream to the week after FOSDEM, which should be the first week of February. So February 5th would most likely be the next live stream. At which point there's going to be quite a bit of catching up to do on everything that happened in IncusOS and related projects by that point. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.